Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session as part of the Partner Summit. It's great to have everyone on board, and I hope this serves as a useful extension to all the great content that was covered during the Qlik World recently. So in today's session, we're going to talk about the importance of gauging and monitoring user experience within the Qlik platform. We're going to look at why engagement with BI solutions is sometimes very low and how you can use embedded surveys and forms to gather feedback from your user base and then use that feedback to improve your solutions and drive adoption of those solutions. Before we get started, just a quick 1-minute intro so that you know who's talking to you today. So my name's Scott Duffy. I'm originally from New Zealand, but I'm now based in Denver in Colorado. I'm a principal consultant with Pomerol. I've spent about 8 years in the Qlik ecosystem. And one area of focus for me is in the customer experience analytics space. Over the past few years, I've been leading our efforts to help customer experience organizations improve the analytics that they provide to their customers, especially within the retail and restaurant spaces or quick service restaurant spaces. So this involves crunching the feedback from surveys deployed to customers to really understand what they're saying and helping those organizations improve their service offering off the back of that. So we're now deploying similar methods to gather feedback from around the user experience within business intelligence solutions, with the aim of building better tools and improving engagement and adoption of those tools. And then a quick word on Pomerol. So we're an analytics consultancy. We deal with all things data, and we're an elite Qlik partner of about 10 years. Our core focus is on helping organizations of all shapes and sizes improve whatever it is that they do through improving their use of data. So we work across manufacturing, financial services, healthcare industries, where we're typically trying to solve problems and generate business efficiencies through data. But we also deploy similar methodologies when we work for nonprofits, schools, and in the public sector in general, where the goals may be slightly different, but the method of getting there is very similar. We're firm believers in the end-to-end power of the Qlik ecosystem. Just within the use case that we're actually going to look at today, we're leveraging the power of Qlik's analytics engine that sits under the hood, but is really at the core. And the ability to deploy and capture surveys is enabled by the suite of Qlik APIs. And the ease at which we can sort of integrate the platform with other tools. So these are just a few of the drivers as to why Qlik is the primary platform that we use to deliver our solutions. So in terms of an agenda for the session today, firstly, we're going to look at what the problem is that we're trying to solve here. We're going to look at what the value is of solving that problem. Why do we even care? We'll demo some examples of surveys deployed to Qlik apps, and then also surveys deployed into a public-facing web mashup. And then we'll look at how we can use the feedback that we gather alongside user metadata from the Qlik monitoring apps to shine a light on the health of the BI solutions that we're building. So what problem are we trying to solve here? Essentially, it's engagement and adoption. So engagement and adoption is a problem that plagues business intelligence. A common stat that I've seen many times before is Gartner puts BI and analytics adoption at about 30% of all employees. And when you actually start looking at the adoption of individual apps within those environments, this number can be a lot lower. So a few key drivers of low engagement and adoption. One is that employees often have access to many systems. So there can be a lot of redundancy between BI platforms. For example, you might be able to fetch a sales number from within SAP, or you might be able to get that same number from Salesforce, or you could get it from a Cognos report, or maybe you've also got those sales numbers in some Qlik reports. Now, is it going to be the same sales number? Probably not. But the fact there is that, often people have multiple choices about where they source their data from and which tools they choose to use and rely on. People are often drawn to what's convenient and what's easy. Legacy systems and processes are hard to retire. So the point here is that you can build new tools and solutions, but getting people to actually use them is then challenging. You're competing for a user's time, their attention, and effectively their loyalty. Trust and confidence is critical with data as well. So first impressions are everything. If people have a choice, they will side with systems that they trust, even if those systems have less functionality. And then a third key driver of low engagement is understanding usability and user support. So one of the most common pieces of feedback that we hear through surveying Qlik users is that they don't fully understand how to use the solutions that are being built for them, and they want more enablement and more support. So this piece is pretty obvious, but let's answer the question of why does this matter? So poor engagement and adoption is a missed opportunity, really. It costs money and it hampers growth. Better information leads to better decision making, and so it's only common sense that the more people we get on board using our analytics solutions, the more impact those solutions are going to have. Another reason why measuring user satisfaction and engagement is important is that it creates accountability, and accountability leads us to build better solutions. I guess it's expected that funding for new projects and initiatives should be tied to ROI. That could be a marketing campaign or a sales promotion. However, many organizations do not really measure ROI on BI projects. But without a clear view of ROI, it's hard to get funding for new projects and initiatives. So instituting KPIs around engagement and adoption should really be core to BI projects. It helps secure your ability to argue for funding in the future, and collecting qualitative feedback to support your user metadata is central to producing those KPIs. So in a nutshell, measuring user satisfaction leads to better engagement and adoption, which leads to better ROI for your projects and initiatives. And that leads to, further investment in your business intelligence and your future analytics initiatives. So what's the solution here? We've looked at the problem, we've looked at why this matters. The solution is one that bridges the gap between users and developers, or users and the, app administrators. With analytics being distributed to every corner of the organization, the end users of BI applications have never been more distanced from those who create and manage the content. And this is really one of the natural consequences of self-service. So bridging that gap between user and developer leads to quick issue resolution, better content, and a more engaged user base. User metadata has traditionally been used to understand how users are engaging with solutions. And this is stats like, how many sessions, how long are those sessions, what pages has a user visited. But what user feedback adds is context to those usage stats. And the power of the two combined is more valuable than the sum, of their individual value. Something we've really zoned in on is user experience, trust, and enablement. So our experience has told us that these are the big contributors to engagement and adoption. But we also like to gauge general sentiment from users as well. We're always looking for champions within the organization to promote our solutions. So we'll often ask questions like, will you continue to use this solution? Or will you tell others about this solution? Users of BI applications, they don't just want to be served. They want to be part of the process and feel like they have the ability to drive improvement. So getting that input from those users is a critical step. So what I want to do now is take a look at some embedded surveys and feedback forms in action in a few Qlik apps. So here we have a pretty typical Qlik application. And the way this would typically work is that the application administrator or the development team, they've decided that maybe this app has been out now for a month or two, and they want to deploy a survey to gather some feedback from the user base. So maybe they've been looking at the usage stats for this application, but they want some more context to help support those usage stats. They want to know, what the users think, what problems they might be having, and what other feedback they want to submit. So what they've done is they've deployed a small snippet of code to this application, and they might have a number of different types of surveys, and they've chosen which survey they want to deploy to this application. Now, what you'll notice on the icon down here is it says, "Hi Scott, please take the 1-minute survey." So it's picked up that I'm Scott and I'm the user that's logged in, and it's also picked up that I have not completed a survey yet in this application. So we can generate some workflow around who different surveys are deployed to and under what conditions someone is prompted to take a survey. So what I'll do here is click on the icon, and it's going to pop open the survey form that I need to fill out. Now, we talked earlier about the different sort of categories that we like to gather feedback on. So the first couple of questions here are really based around trust. So we're asking the user, do you trust the accuracy of the data and the calculations? Do you trust and understand the business logic and the KPIs? So I can go and give these a star rating. So maybe I have full faith in the accuracy of the data, but maybe I could do with some more documentation about the actual business logic. Do you find the app and the reports intuitive to use? Sure. How would you rate the speed and the general performance? I think it's fantastic. How would you rate the support available to you as a user? So maybe I'd like a lot more support and a lot more enablement. So maybe these two questions here around enablement, I want to give some feedback here that I think this is poor, and I'm going to leave some notes to maybe request. So some additional training would be helpful. So we can choose to leave a text comment there to support our answer if we want. And then a couple of questions that we mentioned around just trying to gauge sentiment. So would you recommend colleagues to use Qlik or to use this application? Even though I'm looking for some more training and enablement, I'm still really happy with the tools that have been provided, and I'm excited about continuing to use them and recommending them to colleagues. So once I've filled out the form, I can hit save. And what's actually happening here is the results from my survey are being written back to a database. You can see a confirmation message down in the bottom corner that just says, thank you for completing the survey. And now the Qlik application has picked up that I have completed the survey. And so that prompt has now disappeared. So as part of that workflow, we can choose to only deploy a survey to a user one time, for example, and have it disappear. Or in some other use cases, we might have a survey that appears more than once, or it appears on a regular occurrence, for example. So a different type of example to the full survey that we just looked at could also be something like just a very short form feedback form. So in this example, we actually have an icon that permanently sits on the page. And all this is doing here is it's giving the user the ability on every page constantly to be able to just send some quick feedback. So maybe, on this particular page, there's issues with the bar chart scrolling. So I can just add a quick comment and say, look, this is, I'm giving this a poor rating. It's really disrupting my session. And I can just submit that feedback, and then I can carry on with my session. So the idea of this short form type of feedback is that it keeps the user within the Qlik ecosystem, and it lets them submit feedback without the friction and the complication of having to use a system like Jira, for example. So Jira is fantastic, but we often find a user will often not submit a support ticket because they don't want to go through the process and the hoops they need to jump through to actually submit that. So we're just giving them this very sort of light and nimble and almost informal way of having some contact with the system administrator or the development team to submit that that feedback in a short form and sort of casual type of format. So we've looked at sort of a longer form survey, and then more of a sort of chat function type of window. Another example of what we've done is we actually run Qlik training sessions online at Pomerol. And then what we often do after those sessions is we direct the attendees to a public-facing website that we have, and we ask them to submit some feedback around the session that they attended. So maybe I attended the Qlik Sense storytelling session. And so what it's going to prompt me to do is I'm looking at the results that everyone else has fed back from their training sessions, but it's asking me if I don't mind actually taking a survey myself. So I can jump through and actually answer these questions. Like before, I can add some text feedback into these, for these particular questions as well. So maybe how can we improve? Maybe we need some better template materials to take home after the session. Maybe I'm going to give that a rating of a 3. And then I can submit my results. And then what we see straight away is that those results have updated the dashboard. And so what we're looking at here is actually a web mashup in a public-facing website. And we mentioned this earlier, that using the power of Qlik and its mashup capabilities, we can host this in a publicly facing website. I'm submitting the survey as an anonymous user, and we can also, set up the surveys and feedback forms within a mashup and a public-facing website like this. So we've looked at 3 kind of different examples of capturing user feedback. The long-form survey, a sort of chat function where we're just submitting some really quick feedback. And then we've just looked at the mashup type of example in a public-facing website. The next piece to this is bringing it all together. So what we'll typically do in a Qlik environment where we're gathering feedback from surveys is we'll bring together the survey information, and we'll mash that together with the usage stats and the actual user metadata that's been captured natively in the Qlik environment. So in this dashboard here, over on the right-hand side here, we're looking at some of the metrics from the actual sort of Qlik system itself. So we're looking at how many active users we've had in a week, and 76% of our 573 users have been active in the last week, and how many licenses are occupied. So these are the more traditional statistics that we're used to seeing. Is how many licenses are allocated, how many are free, how many people have logged in. Over on the left-hand side here, our survey results that have been submitted, we're actually aggregating these up to generate effectively a net promoter score. So this score is being generated based off that qualitative feedback from users. And then we're also producing metrics around engagement and adoption. So we like to measure these two things separately. When we launch an app to an intended user base, we really want to see that those users have engaged with the content. But then beyond engagement, the next thing we want to measure is how often and at what cadence is that user logging in. So we really want to see not that they just logged into the app on the day they were sent their access, but they've actually adopted it as part of their day-to-day business process. And so what we'll do is measure adoption generally as a session within the last 7 days. And obviously based on the use case, we can contract or expand that window. But the point I wanted to make there is just that difference between engagement and adoption. And we like to use both of those KPIs as a measure of sort of satisfaction and success for our applications. So I can jump in here and take a closer look at the survey results themselves. And what we can see here is we break our questions out into these 4 different categories. We can see our average survey answers and then how these aggregate up to our net promoter score of 60%. So to wind up the session today, I just want to summarize some key takeaways into 6 different points here. So the first being that poor engagement and adoption is a missed opportunity. You've done the hard work to get to the delivery stage, but that's just the first piece. Capturing that feedback once you actually deploy and sort of iterating on your solution and making it really work for your user base, that's where you find your success. Take lessons from other parts of the organization. So it can be hard to build an ROI case around analytics projects, especially where the benefits are indirect or the gains are expected to come sort of thinly spread over a long time horizon. You can use KPIs around engagement and adoption and that qualitative feedback to show the success of your projects. Surveys and forms, they bridge the gap between the app administrators and the users. It's a frictionless way to get users to have a voice or let users be heard and actually influence the process without a big admin burden of a more formal ticketing system. Those 3 important pieces that we gather feedback on. So the user experience, trust, and enablement. We find that these are the big contributors that we hear about over and over again. And pushing for feedback around these specific topics, it tends to get us actionable information that we can actually use to improve our solutions. The Qlik usage stats and qualitative feedback, they're powerful when combined. So this is really where the power is. Does a long session time tell us that a user is enjoying the application, or does it mean that they can't find what they're looking for? So it's that qualitative feedback we get through surveys that's critical to understanding, what's really happening in your Qlik environment. And then the last piece here, creating alerts and channeling that feedback accordingly. Not something that we looked at today, but what we can do is we can use tools like imprinting or Qlik alerting, and we can use them to push out notifications and feedback summaries to app owners and ensure that the right people know where the issues are and then can take steps to implement improvements. So that brings this session to a close. For more information on deploying surveys into your Qlik environment, please get in touch with me via LinkedIn or through the Pomerol website, or my email is scott@pomerolpartners.com. And from here, we can open the remainder of the call to any Q&A. Thank you.